Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 10. Sideloading and selling direct.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
The first question many of you may be asking is, what exactly is sideloading? And why does it merit half a episode of this show? Selling direct is more obvious. Selling direct is selling from your own website rather than through a store such as Kobo, Amazon or Apple. If you are going to sell books from your own website, then you need to know about sideloading. What this term refers to is having an EPUB or a MOBI file and getting it onto a device so it can actually be read. Now, many people online who give away or sell ebooks sell the PDF format of the document. The advantage of a PDF is it's fairly easy to print off a PDF or to read it on a computer. You can also send it to a phone or other device, and you can, generally speaking, read a PDF. The issue with PDF, though, is it is a printed fixed format. So depending on the nature of the book that you're trying to get people to read on their devices or on their computer, PDF isn't necessarily the best format to use. Many people in the fiction world, especially, will provide an EPUB or a MOBI file. However, these are difficult to print off, so people can't read them in a paper format. And in fact, most of the time people don't want you to print off a MOBI or an EPUB file for the very reason that you could actually buy the paperback version of it. So let's say that you've got a EPUB file or a MOBI file. Why would you ever need to load that onto a machine? What are the reasons for wanting somebody to take your file rather than downloading it from Amazon or some other store onto a device directly? There are three reasons why you may want to provide EPUBs or MOBI files for sideloading onto devices. Firstly is review copies. These are often known as ARC or advanced review copies of books. If you built up an email list or a following for your previous fiction or non-fiction books, then it often makes sense, especially if you're going after a deal such as BookBub, which will promote your services, but needs a certain number of reviews, to get your reviews in very early. So the way that a lot of authors do this is to provide review copies to their trusted group of people way before the book is available for a release on a store such as Amazon. Now, there's very little provision for actually providing review copies on these stores and not making a book available. So generally speaking, people will be sent an EPUB or a MOBI file, so they need to get this onto their device and be able to read it. While this is not directly the author's responsibility, and most reviewers will know how to do this, every now and then there will be somebody who has no idea how to get an EPUB or a MOBI file into a state and onto whatever device they want to read the book on to actually read it. So it's as well for an author to know how to sideload a book onto a device. Another reason people often provide EPUB and MOBI files is for giveaways or prizes on their own website. Many authors, noticeably Nick Stevenson, have done quite large giveaways to drive up their email list subscriptions by giving away free ebooks. Additionally, a lot of people have done Facebook advertising campaigns where they've offered free ebooks in exchange for email addresses. These are great ways to build up lists of followers for subsequent releases, as we discussed last week. So again, while this is the person winning the giveaway or receiving the free gift for giving their email address back, you'll still need to know how to tell people to sideload it so they don't turn into angry customers who will leave you a bad review because they couldn't get your file onto their device. The third reason is our second topic for today's show, which is selling direct. If you sell an EPUB or a MOBI file from your own website as opposed to a PDF, the person at the other end will need some very minor tech savvy to be able to get it into a state where they can read it. If they've got an Apple computer, then it's fairly simple to actually read an EPUB file on a computer. Personally, I can't stand the thought of reading a book on an actual computer, as opposed to a mobile phone or an e-reader. But some people do like this. And if you've got an Apple device, then there's a built-in Apple iBooks reader on the device. So if you just click on an EPUB file, somebody can read it on an Apple device instantaneously. The actual ebook reader is part of the Apple operating system for Apple PCs. So sending somebody an EPUB file, if they've got an Apple computer and they really want to read it on there, they can just double click on it and read it on the computer. However, for most cases, you'll probably find somebody with a Kindle or a Kobo reading or a Nook device who wants to read on that machine. In terms of getting your book onto a Kindle device, there are two ways of doing it. One is to plug in a USB cable, which should have come with your Kindle device, though you may have lost it. Generally speaking, these are fairly standard USB cables, though. And I'm sure you could probably buy a £2 or £3 replacement if you haven't got the original. You plug this cable into your PC or your Mac device, and then it suddenly appears like a drive, as if you plugged in some other kind of USB device on your machine. So when you go to the Explorer or Finder window in a PC or a Mac, you'll see that there's a Kindle device, and then you can drag the EPUB file from wherever you've saved it, or the Mobi file from wherever you saved it, onto the Kindle device, and then it should be available for reading on the... It used to be that you could only copy across Mobi files, but I believe most Kindle devices now accept EPUBs as well. This is all a little bit clunky. A similar approach works with Nook and Kobo as well, though they only accept EPUB files. They won't accept Mobi files in general. Another approach that works with Amazon, and Amazon alone, is that if you log into Amazon and go to your Manage Kindle section, there is an option of setting up a Kindle email address. Now what this is a location where you can send personal documents. If you go onto your amazon.co.uk or amazon.com or other Amazon site and then go to your account, you will have to then log on, and you should see a drop down that says Manage Your Content and Devices. Deep inside that there's a Settings tab, and you can scroll down until you get to Personal Document Settings. Now one of the options here is Send to Kindle Email Settings, which allows you to set up an email address, which will be something like your name at kindle.com. And you can literally set that up so it will send it to a particular Kindle device. Or, alternatively, you can actually send it to particular mobile and other devices which run the Kindle app. So if you want to read your Kindle books on something apart from the Kindle device, you can download an app for most phones. I think this even works on a BlackBerry. So if you've got an Apple phone, or you've got an Android phone, or a BlackBerry, there's a Kindle app that you can download. You'll have to log on with your Amazon account the first time you use it, but then you can read any books that you've got in your Kindle library on that phone. And similarly, you can use these email addresses to send to your Kindle library. There is a general email address that you can send to. Further down this list, you'll actually see that there's a approved personal document email list. So rather than just letting any old body send you documents, you need to add in an email address in this section to actually say who can send emails, which is a great idea if you think about it, because you don't want somebody sending you some hardcore erotica document just because they happen to have your Kindle address. So in this position, you put your own personal email address. Once you've got this set up, you can literally take an email containing your document, or you can just attach the EPUB or Mobi file to your document and then send it to this email address, and it will appear in your Kindle library on that device. This is actually a lot easier once you've set it up than mucking about getting a USB cable out of a box somewhere and then plugging it into the side of your Kindle device and then into your computer, turning your Kindle on, going onto Explorer, copying it onto it. For Nook and Kobo and other devices, it's not quite as straightforward. I don't think there's any other way to actually get your file onto the device apart from using one of these USB cables, which is a real down point. With an Apple device, such as an iPad or an iPhone, if you've been sent an EPUB document, you can just click and open it using the iBooks application, which is now default on both iPads and iPhones, and it'll open it up for you anyway. So you don't necessarily need to download the Kindle app or do anything like that to read it on an iPhone or an iPad. You can just use the built-in iBook Store app. If you want to read an EPUB file on a PC, you need to download a program such as Adobe Digital Editions or another EPUB reader to actually be able to read it on your machine. There's also a Kindle app that you can download for the PC, or for the Mac actually for that matter, if you want to read Mobi files on those machines. These are freely available, so it's not a tremendous hardship to do, but obviously this is an extra step. So as you can see, there are actually many ways to get an EPUB or a Mobi file into a position where you can actually read it. And generally speaking, once people have worked out how to do this once, or they've set up a Kindle email address or some other way, it's not an issue. But you're certain to get particular readers who have no idea how to get it onto their device, who will need some sort of technical support. I'll include a guide on my site after this show at some point to take you or anybody else you want to refer my way through how to get their EPUB or Mobi file onto their device. I'm sure there's other guides like this on the internet, but I thought I'd just create my own anyway.
You're listening to the Begin Self-Publishing Podcast with Tim Lewis.
The second topic of today's show is selling direct. Now this may segue slightly into a rant that I'm going to go on about, because selling direct has many advantages and a few disadvantages to selling through a store such as Amazon or Kobo. But personally, it's not something I can do at the moment, due to a slight geographical reason of being based in the United Kingdom. I would not recommend that anybody in the EU tries to sell electronic products directly at the moment. This is because of slightly stupid changes to the VAT regulations that happened in the 1st of January 2015. I'll talk about that in a second. But let's go through the reasons why you might want to sell direct and the reasons why you might not want to. The advantage to selling direct is that you get significantly more revenue per sale than you would on a site like Amazon, especially for cheaper books, or more expensive books even. As you may remember, if you sell an ebook for less than $2.99 on Amazon, you only get 35% royalty. Additionally, if you sell it for more than $9.99, you also only get 35% royalty. This is because Amazon is trying to encourage people to go into that price range. This is similar, though not identical, on the other major ebook retailers like Apple, Kobo and Nook. So from that initial situation, you're already making 30 to 65% extra per sale. This is one of the reasons it encourages a lot of people to sell direct. But there are all sorts of other reasons that appeal to me personally, and it's why I was tempted to try and sell direct until I discovered the changes in the VAT legislation. There are things such as being able to run coupon codes and external affiliates that appeal to me. A coupon code is literally being able to give away a coupon to people to say something like 20% off or 50% off. This is intensely useful for marketing purposes. So for example, let's say you wanted to run an offer on your book. If you can give away a 50% coupon, a lot of people will find that better than simply coming to your website and seeing the price being half what it used to be. This is like a psychological thing. And I understand that some of the ebook stores like Kobo and Apple are either thinking of or in the process of setting up schemes like this. But at the moment, the only way to run a coupon scheme is to run it on your own website or a similar service. An external affiliate relationship is not the way that most people normally think of affiliates. The word affiliate means somebody who sells on your behalf. So let's say that you wanted me to sell your product. What you could do is offer me a certain percentage of the sale price of your product to sell it to other people. So literally, I'm the introducer, I'm the affiliate for your product. which may be a book or a course or other things. You may have noticed on my website I've actually set up some affiliate links. This is quite standard practice on the internet, and while you won't get massive amounts from most of these affiliate arrangements, certainly you can get a few pence or even a reasonable amount of dollars if it's a very high priced product. So in effect, if you can set up external affiliate relationships, so you've got your book on your website and you want other people to promote it, if you can give them, say, 20% or 30% of the revenue, if they send people to your affiliate link to your website, then that's a big boon. That gives you a whole collection of extra people who can promote your book and market it to other people. This, again, is not easily available on sites like Amazon. Amazon has its own affiliate relationship, but the actual affiliate levels are extremely low, say like 3 or 4%. So it's not really enough to get people to specifically promote your book or service. They'd far rather be selling like £200 Amazon lawnmowers and things rather than £2 or $2 ebooks. So being able to have a control over your own affiliate scheme is another advantage to being able to sell direct. Another major advantage of selling direct is that you actually know who your customers are. You can record email addresses and record analytics about who the people are who come to your websites. There's great products like Google Analytics, which is a free analytics program, which will show you in very fine detail where people have come from, what social network they came from, what part of the world, what city or town they came from. The level of granularity you can get in terms of customer and website activity is way more than you get from Amazon, where you have no idea basically who bought your product. You may have tremendous sales from a particular city on Amazon, but you've no idea. You've got no way of knowing that they have actually bought your book. Well, if you sell direct, you're completely in control of that, and you can analyse to your heart's content where your customers are coming from. Another advantage to selling direct is something called remarketing or retargeting. These two terms seem to be interchangeable. You may have noticed that when you visit particular websites, but you don't buy anything, or even if you do buy something, often you'll see adverts on Facebook or on various websites, which happen to have Google advertising, showing you adverts for similar or the same product that you almost bought. This is called retargeting. Compared to normal advertising, this is considerably cheaper because you're only sending it to people who visited your website, or even, in more sophisticated cases, people who visited your product page but didn't sell the product to. This is a fantastic opportunity that selling direct gives you, which again isn't available on third-party websites. This gives you an opportunity to remind people who are maybe thinking of buying your product, got halfway through the process and they had the telephone ring, or something else happened, and they abandoned their cart and they didn't come back. It was nothing to do with your book being not very good, it was just they were distracted. And they could completely forget about the fact they were in the process of buying your book. But then they'll see an advert on Facebook saying, "Do you want to buy this book?" And you'd be surprised how many people that gets back into your website to buy the book. And this is relatively cheap to set up. These are not hundreds of dollars advertising campaigns. These are a couple of dollars a day at the most. Those are the advantages of selling direct. The prime disadvantage of selling direct is that you haven't got a natural group of people who are going to buy your book. You're very much more exposed in the marketing area. You haven't got Amazon charts you can use to send people to your book page. You haven't got the general Amazon email list and the ability of people to browse particular sections. Anybody who comes to your website and buys your book has to be somebody you've pushed there or attracted there in some way. So to sell direct, you need to be much more savvy in terms of marketing than you would if you sell on a site like Amazon directly. This is probably equivalent to selling on some of the non-Amazon websites, such as Kobo and Apple. Much more difficult to sell on than Amazon. So this is a primary disadvantage, certainly if you're outside the EU, for selling direct. The thing that stopped me from selling direct was the discovery of the new EU VAT regulations that came in January the 1st this year. If you're based in the EU, and in fact if you're based anywhere in the world, though this is only really enforceable within the EU, then you should be charging VAT based on the country of the person who's buying your book. Unfortunately, even the rules for determining this are quite complicated. You need to gather two pieces of evidence to say that the person is based in, say, the United Kingdom or Ireland or Germany. And it's one of the worst pieces of legislation I've seen. And I've worked in financial services and seen some pretty awful stuff over the years. They introduced these new VAT rules rather than the old rules where they just added on a percentage for every sale, regardless of where the people were, to try and, open quote, close quote, level the playing field. What was happening is that big companies such as Amazon and Apple were basing themselves in the country in the EU with the lowest VAT rate, which happened to be Luxembourg. They were charging 3% VAT on ebooks, when if you were based in the UK, you'd have to charge 17.5%. Now, the obvious solution to somebody's simple mind like mine would be to unify all the VAT rates. Just have one standard EU ebook rate. But no, the European Union, and in fact more widespread than that, the OECD, which is an international group of countries, decided that they changed to a system where VAT for electronic products, not just ebooks, is charged based on where the customer is based. The problem with this is that it adds a tremendous bureaucratic overhead and an awful lot of complexity in terms of calculating VAT. So it's not the actual fact that we have to pay VAT on ebook sales which is the issue. It's the fact that it's so complicated to administer. And due to a slight screw up in the legislative programme, there's no minimum threshold. So if you sell one ebook to somewhere in Europe, strictly speaking, wherever you are based in the world, you should be paying VAT on that. Now, it turns out that in reality, any of the EU countries have got very little sway in trying to get anybody outside the EU to actually pay this. But if you sell an ebook and you're based in the EU to somebody else online in the EU, you should be paying VAT on it based on their rate of VAT. Now, one approach would be to try and include that price in all your sales. The trouble is there's an awful lot of evidence that needs to be collected and held for 10 years, and the regulations are not at all straightforward. For example, you need to send out VAT invoices in particular formats to particular countries, and at the moment it's totally unworkable as a scheme. The UK has already slightly modified what needs to be done, but if you're just stepping foot into the world of selling ebooks and you haven't got fast sales yet, I would not recommend selling ebooks directly in the EU if you're based in the EU. The slightly sad consequence of this is that other countries around the world are also introducing similar schemes. For example, Japan and South Africa already have similar schemes, though again they've got very little chance of actually being able to enforce it outside their borders. The US had a scheme that got kiboshed in the House of Representatives called the Marketplace Fairness Act, which was going to devolve things for the state governments to be able to charge people based on which state your person who bought your ebook was in. I'd like to think that the international governments could agree a better scheme than this, that doesn't put so much burden on small businesses. But part of me thinks that maybe, as time goes on, direct sales of electronic products on digital platforms directly may be a thing of the past. If you sell through a third party such as Amazon, then they're responsible for working out the VAT on the books. So this isn't something you need to worry about. There are services such as PayHip and other small startup companies who are a slight middleman approach to this, where they will take care of the VAT processing, but they are more expensive than if you were selling directly from your own website. They'll take a fee over and above what a normal PayPal or other claim would be to handle the tax for you, but nowhere near as much as what you would pay if you were using a service such as Amazon. But again, you lose many of the advantages, such as knowing who your customers are and the remarketing. I know some of these smaller providers are trying to add some of this functionality in, but even so, it's just a real annoyance for us people in the European Union, especially as large swathes of the world is just happily getting on with the simple setting up WordPress e-commerce plugins and selling products online. And you'll hear many other podcasts where they tell you that just sell an ebook or a PDF file on your website to be all right. If you're based in the EU, you could be setting yourself up for prosecution for tax avoidance, purely because you're totally unaware of all these new EU VAT regulations. There is a silver lining, though, in that many of the people in the EU Commission have realised after a lot of lobbying that this is a total disaster and are proposing new regulations that will hopefully be discussed in September. So there is hope that the EU will at least change their system to be vaguely more workable in the near future. Near future being probably next year, knowing the way that the European Union works. But we've still got this potential worldwide for various countries to try and introduce fairly silly electronic trading regulations to try and tax the internet. The problem is not paying the VAT. I think everybody is okay with governments trying to collect taxation on electronic products. But it's the stupid way that they've introduced the calculation of how much you should have to pay. It should be an easy calculation for some system like PayPal to work out the tax on a product, not some complicated formula that involves interrogating your customer as to where they're based in the world before you actually work out what you're actually going to charge them. Anyway, that's my rant over. In the show notes for today's episode, I'm going to try and include a quick guide to how to sideload books onto Kindle and other devices. I'll also include a link to the EU VAT Action Group, which is a group dedicated to try and get reform of these VAT regulations for people based in the EU. I'll talk to you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.